Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Radio Islam International. Today we are gathering for a very important discussion. We are looking at the aspect of individual and collective responsibility as Muslims in the Ummah. And joining us on the podcast today is Maulana Ibrahim Bam, the Secretary General of Jamiatul Ulama South Africa, as well as Maulana Tahir Sallu, the Imam of the Mayfair Jumu'ah Masjid, as well as the Ustad at JMS, Johannesburg Muslim School. Maulana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Well, when we talk about individual and collective responsibility, what is the difference between the two and how do we merge the two?
Well, there is no doubt that we are basically going to be accountable for our individual actions. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made mention of that several times in the Holy Quran. وَكُلُّهُمْ آتِيهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَرْدًا. Each and every one of you will come alone to Almighty Allah to account for his deeds. لَقَدْ جِئْتُمُونَا فُرَادًا كَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ, says Allah in the 7 juz of the Holy Quran. You will come to me alone the way you were born alone. So there we will not be able to give the excuse that the environment was not conducive, everyone was doing this evil, I got caught up in it, everyone was in this particular way of thinking and I also got caught up in that thinking. You are going to be held accountable for your individual amal. So in that sense, individual amal is the basis for our eventual success. However, it interspices with collective responsibility and collective amal, as I will go on to explain, because what happens in the environment, it definitely influences our individual amal and our individual way of thinking and our individual response to what is happening in the community. So that is where we find the connection between the two. So while originally we are going to be held accountable for our individual acts and our amal and accountability on individual acts, it has an impact. What happens in the community and our collective responsibility does impact eventually upon our individual amal.
Maulana, your opening thoughts?
Without doubt, like Mona says, our individual responsibility in terms of our taqwa, in terms of our sincerity, is something that is our responsibility. And if you look at the ayat of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم. We normally would say that anybody else being astray would not harm us if we are on the right path. We look at the tafsir of that verse, and it tells us so much about our responsibility, not only in an individual capacity, but as a community as well. So individually we have a responsibility, and I think every human being deep down know their responsibility. And it's when it comes to our responsibility as a collective, then to an extent, sometimes we need some guidance. But in our personal, everybody knows deep down what our responsibilities are.
MashaAllah. Now, Maulana, is individual piety sufficient for salvation? Or is there more to the equation here?
Yes, I think maybe just before we go, I just want to maybe make mention of one or two things. One, لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم just reminds me of something that I heard from one of the scholars, that today people fear Allah with regard to the sins of others rather than their own sins. So you find people are always worried about what other people are doing and worried about the sins of others rather than their own accountability. And so I think that is very important. So now coming back to your question, I think it's such an important question. And we have to keep in mind that while we are people who are going to be held accountable for our individual deeds, we are people who get influence. Right? That is why our beloved Nabi Kareem Sallallahu said, Al-mar'u ala dini khalili, falyanzur ahadukum man yukhalil. A person is on the deen of his friends. So each and every person must see who he befriends. Now what does that tell you? It tells you that your individual piety is at risk if you're only concentrating and you are only relying upon your individual piety. Because we are people that what happens in the environment impacts upon us. Why is it easier for everyone to do good deeds in Ramadan? Because it's an environment of goodness. So even if you are not wanting to do it, you feel yourself compelled and drawn and attracted towards good deeds because everyone is doing it. So, in a similar manner, when things are happening in the community and society which is wrong, and it becomes pervasive and it prevails, it impacts upon you. And of course, there's that famous hadith of Muwatta Imam Malik that someone asked our beloved Nabi Kareem Sallallahu, I think it was Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, anuhlik wa fina salihun, are we going to be destroyed if there are pious people in our midst? And he said, إِذَا كَثْرَ الْخُبْثِ. Yes, when evil becomes prevalent and dominant, you can be destroyed despite your individual piety. What does it tell us? What a great hadith. It tells us that what is going to happen upon the community, society, is going to impact upon you. So even with individual piety, from the hadith, if you are not worried about what happens to the community, you can still be destroyed. And the second thing with regard to the fact that what happens in the community, it impacts upon us. And your individual piety is not guaranteed if you don't make effort with regard to communal goodness in an environment.
A hadith is coming to mind, Mawlana Tahir, of the people who boarded the ship, of the upper deck and the lower deck. Maybe this would come in good connection here.
It's actually one of the most realistic hadith with regard to that. People on the lower deck of a ship need water, and the people on the upper deck, on the upper part of the ship, also need water. And if the people on the bottom keep saying every time we need to go up to get water, why are we disturbing the people on the top? Let's just make a hole at the bottom. Not only will they be destroyed, but everybody will be destroyed. Individual piety, I think the crux of it is, individual piety is not a license to judge somebody else. Individual piety is important, but collective piety, kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. And the amazing thing about ukhrijat linnas, ta'muruna bil ma'ruf comes first. We focus so much on just trying to find the bad elements in community to make a change in our community. But if we have to focus on encouraging towards good, we can change the entire community into being a place where we can be positive, a place where we can all be together in Jannah.
Subhanallah. Now, Mawlana, if collective responsibility is so important, why is it that we find that there isn't this implementation taking place on a broader scale then?
Well, firstly, before we go, let me just give you some examples of the importance of collective amal and the importance of worrying about the collective. One very beautiful example, where I read recently, is that Allah Ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. You and I, we read it on a continuous basis in all rakats of salat. Even if you are alone in the privacy of your home, in tahajjud prayers, and you would think that I'm going to say, Ihdini Sirat al-Mustaqim. Oh Allah, guide me upon the right path. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ihdina. There also you say, you are making dua for the collective. You are making dua for, oh Allah, guide us upon the right path. Another beautiful example of worrying about the collective is the beautiful example of Habib Najjar. Now, why I find this very encouraging and motivational and inspirational is many times people who are there, who are individuals, they say, but Maulana, what can we do? We are only individuals. We are one person. What difference can we make? So then I normally give this example. Here was one person. He was not a Nabi. He was not a wali, right? At least known to be a wali. Of course, afterwards we know that Allah Ta'ala makes mention of him in the Quran. Of course, must have been a person of great status for him to be remembered by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and mentioned in the Holy Quran in Surah Yasin, which is immortalized till the day of Qiyamah. And that is a person who comes and tells these people that, remember, وَجَاءَ رَجُلٌ مِّنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ يَسْعَىٰ قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اتَّبِعُوا الْمُرْسَلِينَ. And when he saw the people of his tribe, turning against the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, falsifying them, not accepting their messages, and he said, اتَّبِعُوا الْمُرْسَلِينَ. Follow the Anbiya. اتَّبِعُوا مَنْ لَا يَسَلُكُمْ أَجْرًا وَهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ. And why won't you follow someone who's not asking you for any financial help, financial assistance, no financial gain for them, and they are calling you towards Allah? وَمَا لِيَ لَا عَبُدُ الَّذِي فَتَرَنِي. What's wrong with you that you can't worship the one who created you? وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And then what they did, they martyred him, they killed him, so they assassinated him. And when after he was assassinated, قِيلَ ادْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ, Allah Ta'ala says, because of you being on truth, helping the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, telling the people with them that they should also follow the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah Ta'ala put him in Jannah. And when he's in Jannah, can you imagine this? Here we are not guaranteed Jannah. That is why we are supposed to worry about the collective. When you are in Jannah, you might think, what is the benefit? And I've achieved my goal. Why should I worry about the collective? There also he said, Ya layta qawmi ya'lamun. If only my tribe comes to know, bima ghafara li wa ja'alani min al-mukramin. How Allah forgave me, how Allah honored me. Oh Allah, let them know how you dealt with me, so that they could also follow what I did by following the Anbiya and following truth. I mean, I don't think you can get a better example of worrying about the collective than this beautiful example which is in the Holy Quran.
SubhanAllah. So now coming back to the question that if it is so important, why are we seeing the failure of its implementation in our community?
I think the compassion towards the Ummah, the compassion towards our fellow humans. One of the first points in life that I think I learned from Maulana Bam, which is I don't know how many years ago, was when I give an example when we were just very, very young. He was talking about how important it is for us to have compassion towards saving everybody. Maulana gave the ayat, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Save yourselves and save your families from the fire of hell. And what a practical example. Maulana said, if you come home and you see there's a fire brigade on your street and everything's cordoned off and there's police, and you get there and you see there's red tape and you cross that and you say, look, I live on the street, and you get there and you see it's your home that's on fire. Allah protect us all. And when you get there and you see, oh, it's my home, and you get there and you realize, okay, my whole family is here, but there's one child of mine's inside. And you can see the fire, you see your child on the inside. What will you do to get your child out of there? And it's not going to be out of anger, it's not going to be out of anything. You won't even bother what's the reason that started the fire. It's immaterial. For now, I just need to save my child. And he said, you'll do whatever you need. And you'll cross any bounds. Go in to make sure you put your own life at risk just to save the child. And as long as we can have that compassion for every other human being. And this ayat, Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. One of the Arab scholars said this so beautifully. He said, if as an ummah, we treat the next Muslim when advising them like we advise our own children. He said, when you advise your own children, you don't go onto social media to talk bad about them. You don't openly talk about them. You don't take every gathering, every wedding, every opportunity to talk against your child, but you advise them, then you get up for tahajjud and you make dua for them. Why? Because it's my child. And I want the best for them. He said, as long as we as an ummah can treat every human being like my own child in trying to get everybody into Jannah, this responsibility will become a pleasant journey for us. And it will eliminate all the other negativity in our community, and it will actually make us so great in the eyes of Allah in fulfilling this responsibility.
So, Mullah, the question comes then, where did we become so individualistic? I mean, my career, my family, my holiday, my everything. Where did we lose that? Where did we lose that Ummat Pana that we talk about?
I think it's a modern influence. Now, if you look at the Western civilization, it is all about me, myself, and I. Someone has said it. The trinity of the age is me, myself, and I. Everything is around. Look at everything. It's only about the aspect of myself. And one of the reasons why we also do that is that by collective, responsibility, it's just an unnecessary headache. Why should I worry about it? And not many times we hear people saying that I just go to the masjid, I come out, I don't get involved in everything. Why must I get involved in the community? It's a headache. Then you look at the hadith in Sahih Muslim. المسلم الذي يخالط الناس ويصبر على أذاهم خير من المسلم الذي لا يخالط الناس ولا يصبر على أذاهم. A Muslim who intermingles with people and he bears the inconvenience with patience. Now, absolutely it's true that if you are going to intermingle with people, you are going to interact with people, you are going to be a man of the people, then you are going to have to bear patiently the inconvenience that come with interaction. And instead of looking upon it as a burden, what does the hadith says? That person who bears the inconvenience of interacting with people, he is better than the one who doesn't interact and doesn't have to worry about the inconvenience that he gets from other people. Now that is a mindset that we have. Why must I magajmari ho ko jo hai?
Yeah.
Why do we need all this in our life? Let me sit quietly and do my own things. But that goes against the entire mindset and the ethic of Islam, which wants us to be part and community driven. So I think that is one of the things, why must I get involved? Because it's an unnecessary headache and I don't need it in my life. But whereas the ethic of Islam is that we are community driven. Right? And then the second thing is individualism. Now, many years ago I was part of a discussion. It was a broad discussion in one of the media houses. And someone spoke about this aspect. Why is the entire world and why is everyone so based on individual success, irrespective of what happened? Someone, he was a politician or he was someone who was a social analyst. So he made this example. He said, the Survivor series.
Yes.
I don't know much about it, but you came to know about it. Survivor series, people go into an island and they all stay together. They're supposed to stay together. And yet at the same time, they're all worried about that 1 million or 2 million, whole particular type of reward that is guaranteed for the person who comes through the whole ordeal and the last person standing, he gets. But what does he need to do? So every week he needs to get rid of one contestant.
Wow.
So every week you're getting rid of one contestant, people whom you are staying with. So what? To get that 1 or 2 million rate, which is a reward. So that is the way that individualism has been bred. So we are part and parcel of this community. So it's all the time, instead it is I instead of we. So we are all looking at our selfish interests. We are looking at our own benefit, our own small nest that we want to build, rather than the collective good. Not understanding if there is collective good, then it impacts even better to your individual prosperity. And someone has very beautifully put it that if Almighty Allah has given you favors, then make your table bigger rather than your fence longer.
Subhanallah.
Now, what actually happens, look at our South Africa. If no matter how prosperous you are, right, and you think that I'm going to be in a gated community, you're not going to be able to solve the problem of the community. Right? So if there is unemployment and there is discontent of the people, one day that discontent might come upon you and visit you even if you are in a gated community. So if you work towards a collective solution to try and make it into where people are employed and people are sort of prosperous everywhere across the board, then it impacts upon your individual prosperity. Muhammad Hassan Nabi Rahmatullah used to say a very amazing thing. He used to say that the sign of an individual, the sign of a collective society of goodness is when there are people who are the middle class. The greater the middle class in any community and society, the greater that community will be stable and prosperous. Now look at our situation in South Africa. Are we a nation where there are people who are in the middle class across the society, or we have an unequal society? We are perhaps the most unequal society in the world. Only perhaps Brazil comes close to South Africa, because we are the most unequal. And that is the reason why you don't have prosperity. That's why you don't have safety. And that's why you have so much crime. If only we can start thinking about it, the politician can start off, and the people of the community can start thinking like that.
Amazing how Mona mentioned about the Survivor series. It makes me think that maybe there's a segment within us that makes us feel that Jannah is a prize. I need to eliminate more people so I can get Jannah. The Jannah of Allah is so vast that inshallah we'll all get in there. There's no need to eliminate anyone.
That is the point, Devana. And when we look at the collective society, how much we are able to achieve. Here in Johannesburg, we have the North African communities. How they put together their buying power. And because they come together, so if 10 businesses are buying, if they need cake flour, why must 10 businesses buy individually? Why not put in our resources together and collectively put in a request for cake flour, an item like that, you get it at a better rate and everybody benefits. But I see that it's a difficult thing to achieve, especially in our own circles. Mona.
Within our circles, we need to broaden up to wish good for the next person. The reason our buying power as a Muslim community hasn't grown is because at times we focus on he'll know what's my cost.
Yeah.
He's also going to get a deal. He's also going to make a huge profit. And people will know what's my buying power. So many businesses have said that if I join this pool, people will automatically know what's my turnover. Whereas in other communities, it's completely immaterial. They're just focusing on getting the best deal so that we all can benefit. And I think once we can get to that, it's amazing. We just pool our resources, and we don't reinvent the wheel, but rather we work towards assisting each other. Practical example: there's a person in community who said he wanted to do something, so he decided they're going to the hospital to visit the people who are ill. When he got there, he said, okay, I need to start focusing on getting some sandwiches for the people. So when he got back to the community, they said to him that that initiative is already there. So he went to them. And eventually he got to an alim and he said, look, I need some advice on this. And alim said, look, they've got the entire system in play. The entire vehicle is there. There's no need to reinvent. All you do is you add something to it. So together with the sandwich, now he adds a juice to that. But it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not wasting resources. As long as we can be there to assist each other, we will strengthen as a whole.
Well, just to labor on this point, I mean, you've seen it as a collective unit. Even families were living as a collective unit. Look at Fita's days and the days of the past. In one house, we had 10 to 12 people living in a small dwelling. I mean, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms maximum. And there wasn't this en suites that we have nowadays. But because of that collective approach, they were able to achieve so much. They were able to do more as a community. I don't know, on your side, now if you got 3 daughters-in-law, you got, in Gujarati, they say, ton chula jale. Now, why must 3 stoves go on? So we're coming from that history of our community. I think we're losing more and more touch with the collective approach that we had before.
Yeah, it's so sad because we look at, again, personal interests, personal benefits, personal discomforts, comforts, rather than looking at the collective. So Fitas is a very interesting incident and a very flattering example. I do feel that sometimes it was also overdone. You needed some sort of privacy. Yeah. There was no privacy in the...
It comes with the challenges.
So, but you could take from the good from there, and some of the other things you could maybe just do a little bit of changing and panel beating with regard to it. I do feel that certain things with regard to what has happened transpired thereafter, where you have maybe better homes, better privacy. Another point that I find very interesting is that you never find, in traditional kutubs, traditional books, you never find anywhere that they made big baths and the big contents, or they had topics on mother-in-law, daughter-in-law disputes.
Yeah.
Someone one day, one of the younger aunties, when they asked me, said, is there any book that I can read from traditional sources about mother-in-law, daughter-in-law? I say it never existed. It's a modern phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it came, largely from India. And that is why you still, even today, with all the progress, or so-called progress, the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law thing is such a big thing in that particular context and that culture.
Yeah.
I feel, and maybe I might be wrong, that comparatively 20, 30 years ago, we have moved on from there. There's greater synergy nowadays. There's greater type of cooperation and better relationship, especially amongst the younger ones, and perhaps, for lack of a better word, the more educated ones, where you don't have that degree of, problems between mother-in-law and daughter-in-laws the way you have in quote-unquote traditional families. But I think once again, I think we underestimate the value of cooperation, and we underestimate the value of unity. And maybe that is the next thing that I would like to this is the importance of unity. How much emphasis Islam has placed upon unity. In unity is strength. In unity is barakah. And I think maybe one of the reasons is we don't look at the benefits of that, and we just tend to look at our own personal small small sections instead of looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, this bigger picture, keeping it in mind is so important. And it all starts off from foundation, husband, wife, then the immediate family, then the broader family, then the community, then the national level and international level. So it has to be addressed at grassroots levels.
Without doubt, if a family has got unity, if a couple have got unity, they will work towards unity in their own home. They'll work for unity within their extended family. And our children see that. And when our children see that, they are growing up to be the next generation. Once a person has got unity in his home, and I've noticed in community very often, may not always be the case, but very often, a person who is making the most amount of noise outside is the one who's got some underlying issue at home which he can't address. So all the noise comes outside, but you realize that if there's unity within the home, between the couple, between the family, that then passes on over to the masjid, it passes on over to the community, it passes on over to the ummah at large. So it does start, without doubt, within the family at home. And we must not underestimate that.
Well, as you were saying about unity, some of the...
I think we don't look at the importance of the collective in the unity. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had said, Yadullahi ala al-jama'ah, the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning the assistance of Allah ta'ala is on the united lot. فَإِنَّ الْبَرَكَةَ مَعَ الْجَمَاعَةِ, blessings in the united lot. I mean, look at how Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also made mention, eat together, eat from one plate, be together with regard to it. So many different ways of how Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam emphasized the unity and the collective lot. One of our great scholars, Maulana Yusuf Sab Rahmatullah Alayh, and I heard this from Mufti Zainul Abidin, and he spoke in the Azad al-Ijtima many years ago, and the whole talk was, on the importance of the ummah and the unity of the ummah. And he gave such beautiful examples, and he quoted Maulana Yusuf Sab, the son of Maulana Ilyas Sab Rahmatullah Alayhi, who said, and he spoke about the unity of the ummah just a few days before he passed on, right? And that was his last talk. And he said that until you are not united, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's assistance will not come upon you, and Allah's help will not come upon you. And then he gave the example of, the time of Medina Munawwara, that if there were 10,000 people, everyone had the support of 9,999 people.
Subhanallah.
Today, if you are 10,000 people in different organizations, and then we were all united under one. And Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made such a great emphasis on making people together. He brought everyone together. Today, we don't have that quality. We seem to have missed that seerah quality of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, bringing everyone together. So the son of Abdullah bin Ubay, the leader of the Munafiq, wanted to kill his father, right? Because of the excessive inconvenience he caused to Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Ulama said one of the reasons also, he said, he came to Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Ya Rasul, let me deal with him before someone else deal with him. And if someone else deals with him, as a son, I might be motivated by, the love of the son to do something. Let me rather do something. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, don't do anything to him. Ya Rasulullah, look at what he has done. Look at what he had done in Uhud. Look at what he had done with regard to the rumor mongering against Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala. We all know that waqi of if. Ya Rasulullah, what hasn't he done? Give me permission. Why? He reads salat with us. He reads namaz with us. People will say, Muhammad kills his own companions. SubhanAllah, can you just imagine? People will say Muhammad kills his own companions. And we have to give a united front. And those who start sometimes creating disunity and showing that disunity in the media, they must take such a great lesson from this. So don't give them an opportunity to say Muslims are disunited. Because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said people will say Muhammad kills his own companions. I mean, it's such... And I think perhaps one of the reasons is that we don't look at the collective, or we don't pay sufficient emphasis, is because we seem to have missed the importance which has been emphasized by our beloved Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi
Wasallam. And this is an important point. I mean, to foster unity, Islam doesn't just command us to develop it. Islam even creates the channels for it. I mean, your daily salah is performed in congregation to foster that unity and collectiveness as a community. Every day you will meet a new person in the community. You ask him, how are you? You greet him, you interact with him. You get to know a new person. Likewise, on a day of Jumu'ah, you congregate in your hundreds. and on the day of Eid, even in larger numbers. And on the day of Arafah, in the plains of Arafah, even in greater numbers, in the millions. All of this is there to foster unity and collectiveness as an ummah. And we will survive and thrive when we are united and we move as a collective front and not as individuals and only worried about our own selves. So, Mulana Tahir, the question then is that if you want to contribute to this collective community, where do the individuals begin then?
Every person must first identify what is their strength. And if every person can then capitalize on what is their strength and stay within that line, whilst taking advice from those who are seniors, taking advice from them, taking advice from the experienced people, and staying within that towards the broader community. One is very rightly used to say that when there's a war that's taking place, you have the soldiers that are on the ground,
Yes.
giving their physical. Then you have a commander that's sitting in an air-conditioned office, monitoring the entire situation. Then you have a pilot who's in the plane. He said, if any one of these three have to say that, you know, I'm doing this here, I'm sitting on the ground, the person sitting in the air-conditioned office is not equal to me, so I'm no longer going to be contributing towards this. He said, nothing will function. Everybody have got a responsibility. Stay within your line. Do what you do best towards the whole, towards the collective. And if everybody, we identify what is in our communities, simple example, take janazas for example. It's not everybody's cup of tea to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, go to the home of a deceased, collect the janaza to give ghusl. It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's not everybody's cup of tea to sit with the president and talk to him about issues that relate to the Muslim community. It's not everybody's cup of tea to build a masjid. Everybody, Allah has given an individual talent. And that's why when the Nabi said, أَقْرَأُهُمْ لِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ Ubay ibn Ka'b, every Sahabi, the Nabi gave, this is what is his strength. So find what is our strength. Don't reinvent the wheel. Go to those who have got the experience and assist, and let's stay in our lane whilst supporting everybody else. If we can just support, even if it's with dua, even if it's with a good word. So my name is Peter Ahmadi had the habit that if he saw somebody who's, for example, busy with the janazah, when he meets them, Allah reward you for the work that you're doing for the community. This person may never see you physically participating in their field, but in the back of their mind, you gave them a dua, so they feel that you're part of them. If we can start with that, inshallah, the community can grow.
Yours?
I think one important point, if you want as an individual, want to do something for the community and you feel now, I feel lost, I want to do something. And I look at the situation, I look that there is disunity, what can I do? I think, firstly, a person must have the courage of his convictions. You must think and say, and then together with what Mulana Tahir has said, stick in your lane, choose what you feel that you are good in and continue. One of the other ways is have the courage of your conviction. So the Quran tells us, وَشَاوِرُهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ, consult on your matters. فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ. After making mention of shawirhum, which is a collective, which is a plural sense, then Allah Ta'ala says فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ, which is a singular phrase. Once you have made up your mind, after making mashwara, after consulting people who are in the know, that you feel that this is something that is good for the community and I want to do it, فَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Then you need to rely upon Almighty Allah. So do the necessary preparations, consult people, what is what I intend doing, is it good, not good, and after making all the necessary preparations, all the necessary consultations from the experts, then once you have resolved, then you rely upon Almighty Allah. Now look at the example of so many examples in our history of people who today we just take it for granted. We make mention with regard to what they have done. Our beloved Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Abu Talib came to him and said, the people are saying that you are causing, a rift in the communities. And, why don't you desist from what you're doing? Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't, accede to it. What he said was, when I put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, I will continue doing because I've got firm conviction that in this there is benefit for mankind. Umar radiallahu anhu, when he saw so many huffaz shaheed in the battle of Yamama. What did he do? He sent to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and he said, let us put the Quran in a book form, in a mushaf. Because that time it wasn't in one collective book form. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, it is easier for me if you tell me to move a mountain from one place to the other, than to tell me to do something that Nabi Karim Sallallahu didn't do. But eventually he told him, and today we got 12 or 13 mushafs in one house. That time there was one in the whole ummah. And when it was mooted, there was a certain degree of reservation because it was not done in the time of Nabi Sallallahu. But there was courage of conviction. In this there is good. And he continued until it became a norm. So many examples. Let me give you an example recently. When Mu'ayyid Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi started off his work that he went to go door to door, calling people towards, going out in the path of Almighty Allah, because it was something that was, although it was grounded in Islamic teachings and there was sufficient evidence, it was something that was out of the box, so to speak. It wasn't done at that time. So some of the ulama also expressed reservations. And today we saw the great benefit that came out of this work. And we make dua that Allah Ta'ala continue this benefit and be done the way Hazrat Mu'ayyid Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi did it.
So, Mullah, we've been speaking about the importance of unity and the collective approach. Why do we find so many divergent voices in our community?
Well, the point is there's always going to be divergent voices. Difference of opinion is not wrong. Maulana Mufti Mahmud Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi used to say that there'll only be two times when there will be complete consensus. One is when people don't have honesty and integrity, and one is when people don't have intellect. When people have intellect and they look at things from their own perspective according to the intellect, they will form opinions. And the second time when they will not, one of the reasons why there will be difference of opinion is when people have honesty. That means sometimes they have an intellect, they have a view, they have an opinion, but they are not honest enough to tell another person, you have said this, I am not in agreement with it, and my view is this. So if they don't have honesty and integrity, they won't voice their view. But if there is honesty and integrity, and there is intellect, you're going to have difference of opinion. The matter is how you manage that. And I think one of the other reasons is sometimes we overstate, we make ghulu, extremism with regard to our difference of opinion. We tend to look at issues that are subdivisional issues in which there is scope for difference of opinion, and we make that into major battles. And the fundamentals where people are losing their iman, we don't pay enough attention with regard to it. When we are supposed to be doing that, that is why when Imam Malik Rahmatullah Alayhi was told by the Khalifa of the time that I want to make your Mu'atta the official fiqh of the entire Khilafat, that will be the only fiqh. And what did Imam Malik Rahmatullah Alayhi? He said an amazing thing. He said, no, don't do that. People have, in their own regions, have received deen from different imams, different sahaba. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu was in Egypt. Abdullah ibn Masud radiallahu anhu was in Iraq. That is where the fiqh of Imam Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi came, that everyone follow their own fiqh. Everyone follows their own fiqh. Now someone who comes, for example, in North Africa to our country, he has received and he has got his whole entire fiqh from the ulama who he had learned from when he was young. Right? So why are we insisting that he must follow our fiqh? So we sometimes overstate our difference of opinion, we make ghulu with regard to it. And I think that is one of the reasons with regard to, we can't seem to get united. We must be able to say that fiqh, everyone follow their own fiqh, but there is a meeting point with regard to common issues. So one of the things that are just for example, this Gaza issue has brought people together. That despite the fiqh, people from different backgrounds of the ummah have been able to come together to be able to show solidarity with the people of Palestine. And not only amongst Muslims, it has happened across the faith spectrum, that people of goodness in their heart have been able to come together with regard to the Palestinian issue. And we make dua that inshallah this collective effort and this collective conscience will bring an end to the oppression.
Your thoughts, man?
Difference of opinion is not something that is there. It will always be there. It's a disunity that is questionable. We can differ, but that does not mean that we need to disunite. People of the past have showed us, Sahaba have showed us that you can have a difference of opinion, but it doesn't mean that you have to be disunited.
Mm.
Our great Imams of fiqh have taught us that you can have a difference of opinion, but they were still united. So difference of opinion will happen in everything. It is on a simple, practical thing. Two people will not like the same type of car.
Mm.
But it doesn't mean that you find people fighting on the road. You don't find a Merc driver trying to push over a BM driver. It's just simply because you're driving a different car. Difference of opinion will definitely be there. And it's not a bad thing. It's the way that we handle that which leads to this unity. That's the issue.
So talking about handling this, Maulana, what does an individual do when he's witnessing a disagreement among scholars and ulama, especially when this involves, different views or apparent maligning of one another?
And I think the first thing, our objective and our interest should be to close the gap rather than widening it. I think it's very important that we should always find. Many times people say that, well, things are happening, I don't have any control with regard to it. Well, at least in your own situation, you first see to it that my interest should be that I should not widen the gap further. I should bring the two people together as far as possible. Don't let me narrow the gap rather than widening the gap. Why should I become the means of further dividing the ummah? First, if everyone starts thinking like that, we will start getting people to try to narrow the gap rather than widening the gap. And I think that is just so important that each and everyone looks at what he can do. Another important point, many times people say, well, the ulama are fighting, what should we do? The ulama are, at one another's neck. Well, the point is this, that there are many instances in our daily life where you have this happening. And I've seen it many times. I've had some health issues. You go to different doctors. We've seen my children, family members having health issues. You go to different doctors. Each and every one have their own particular methodology and view with regard to how to dealing with it. No one starts maligning the doctors because of them having different views with regard to a matter or a methodology or way of treating a particular illness. Why don't we do it there? This doctor is so bad and he's a quack and he's not like this. And no one does that. So we also need to have it. You need to have a balance. So Maulana was speaking over the Mercedes and BMW. You might not pull him off the road, but afterwards he might tell you that you're driving a junk or something like that. But at the end of the day, we just need to narrow rather than widening the gap.
Yes.
And I think one of the reasons is we should be very, very careful with regard to sending messages out. Today we are living in an age of social media. It has become one of the catalysts and one of the major reasons with regard to widening the gulf. So we all know the hadith. It is enough for a person to be termed a liar that he relates and he disseminates everything that he hears. So before we do that, I think everyone now must become more responsible. Before forwarding, don't only worry about the likes that you're going to get. I'm the first person who broadcasted that. I'm going to get certain degree of likes and clicks on my social media. Rather look at it, is it verifiable? Is it verified? Is it in someone's interest? Is it wise for me to put it out there? I mean, you're putting sometimes something that, yes, we all know that it has happened. There is a motor car accident that had happened. Allah Ta'ala protect all of us and protect our children and protect our people with regard to it, especially at this time of the year. And then actually what happens thereafter? Now people see it, they put it up and they splash it in social media. Not even worried with regard to the sensitivity of the people who are involved. So I think we should always look at it, and especially with regard to the ulama thing, I think very important. When you have a problem with regard to, and you have doctors giving you different views with regard to treating, what do? You go to the doctor that whom you have the greatest trust in. And you don't go and malign the other doctor. You don't go and say he's bad, he doesn't know what he's doing. What you do is say, listen, what this doctor tells me, I seem, inclined towards it for whatever reason. Right? So the same thing, whichever alim you feel comfortable with, wherever you feel that, you've got some sort of inclination towards him for whatever reason, then you follow him without maligning anyone else. As Imam Malik rahmatullah used to say, avoid, heated arguments. For heated arguments takes away the nur of knowledge from the heart. So, things must be discussed academically. Things must be discussed in a nice atmosphere. Sit and talk about the different views. And stop this whole particular maligning and stop this whole particular argumentation and where you raise the voices of one another, because that is counterproductive. Follow whomsoever you got trust in and leave the others to whomsoever they want to follow.
And then from the public's point of view, what's the point of engagement? I mean, if it's an academic discussion, do we get involved? Don't we get involved? What should be the approach?
Firstly, I would like to say Islam doesn't prohibit anyone to become a scholar.
Right.
Unlike, there are other religions. You have to be from a certain pedigree for you to become a theologian and a scholar. Otherwise, you're not allowed. The common people are not allowed to become scholars. Islam doesn't put any type of restrictions with regard to anyone to become a scholar. Anyone can become a scholar, right? So there's complete equality in that. But until you're not a scholar, you don't have the right to be able to discuss matters that you don't have knowledge about. وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that do not venture into things which you have no knowledge of. The people who are on the ground and awam must not discuss scholarly issues, must not discuss Sharia issues if they don't have the necessary and requisite knowledge and the evidence with regard to it. Yes, follow the imam or follow the ulama and the alim that you have trust in. Follow him by all means. Right? But you don't have the right to be able to discuss or to be in judgment with regard to two scholars on the basis of the evidence that they are providing. Because you don't have the necessary qualification and the necessary qualities with regard to those evidences that are provided.
Subhanallah. What are your thoughts?
I think importantly, like Mona says, respect all, follow the one that you have an inclination towards, whilst fully understanding that he's not a prophet. The alim you're following is a human being. He can make a mistake. Either any alim can make a mistake, any scholar can make a mistake, but it doesn't make him a bad person. Neither does that mean that we should look at the fault of the opposing person. And we don't need to insist for the whole world to follow the one that I'm comfortable with. And if we just have to maintain that, just be sincere about following the person. It should not be that I'm following this person because they're different or I need to stand out. Because that brings about a lot of double standards within us. We say that I'm following a particular person, but we don't really follow them. We're just doing it to be different or to create some sort of a noise about ourselves. So if we can boil down to that, respect everybody, follow the one you want. You don't have to insist on everybody else. And the simple parts of Islam, that there is no difference of opinion between anybody. Let's work collectively on that. A simple thing today, al-badi'u bis-salam, badi'u min al-kibr. You understand that hadith so well today. A person won't make salam to the next person because I differ with him. Whereas this is the hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. وَبِالْ وَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. With your close family members, enjoying family ties. If we have to work on all of that and say, look, whoever you follow at a family gathering, I'm not going to discuss what your view is or what your shared's view is or what your organization's view is. I'm here to fulfill my responsibility of family ties, and we do that. We leave all of those other discussions out of the equation. We just be simple human beings. We don't need to have an opinion on everything. Haqqul Muslimi ala Muslim. We know what the rights of another Muslim are upon us. We fulfill those as a community, and we leave all of the difference of opinion outside where it's not our ambit of discussion. And I think in that, inshallah, if people were to just know that the person I'm following is not a prophet, so he can make a mistake, but I love him, I respect him, I follow him, and that doesn't mean that I must not go out and expose everything that I think, in my opinion, is the right way.
What are your concluding thoughts as we wrap up today?
I think this ummah of our beloved Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was brought into existence with great amount of effort by our beloved Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We cannot allow to break this ummah. We need to be focused to make this ummah strong. Allah Ta'ala warns us, وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ وَاصْبِرُوا. Do not disunite with one another. Do not dispute and argue with one another. Allah Ta'ala will make you weak, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will take away your strength and your courage. And we are seeing it. I've seen it happening in families, empires. When they started fighting with one another, that whole particular empire came crumbling down in terms of many things. The similar thing will happen. Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam put so much effort with regard to putting this ummah together. All the time Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was worried with regard to bringing the ummah together. And we have to now look at how we can continue and perpetuate the legacy of our beloved Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That ummah which was so valuable to our beloved Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in which he put so much effort to bring the ummah together, that we cannot allow this ummah to flounder. and we cannot allow the Ummah to become weak.
Now we say Jazakallah khairan to both our guests today, and Alhamdulillah, that has been a very fruitful discussion on the topic of individual and collective responsibility as far as Muslims are concerned.